For me, Zayne is one of the most compelling characters in Love and Deepspace. Not just because of his stoic and reserved demeanour, but because of the depth of his internal struggles. Now, beneath his composed exterior, Zayne is a man in constant battle with himself. He struggles with his emotions, his fears, and most of all, his overwhelming desires. Now, at first glance, a lot of players seem to think Zayne is cold, distant, and emotionally unavailable. But when you actually get to know him, you find out that the complete opposite is true. This is a man that loves with an intensity that is almost impossible to contain. His high sex drive is not merely about physical need, it's deeply psychological. Sex for Zayne is about control, reassurance, and love. It's a way for him to express emotions that he might struggle to verbalize. It's a way to ground himself when everything feels chaotic. And it's a way to confirm that MC is his. He has this kind of push and pull dynamic, which is the need to be close to her, but the fear of losing control. And this adds layers of complexity to his character that make his intimacy all the more powerful. Across different incarnations of himself, Dr. Zayne, Galen, Foreseer, Dawnbreaker, he struggles with the same fundamental issue: control. Whether it's control over his body, his mind, his fate, or his emotions, he constantly fights against the idea that he could lose himself. And this fear manifests in many ways, but when it comes to his relationship with MC, it plays out most clearly in his need for intimacy. So let's break this down. How does Zayne's deep-seated fear of losing control over himself connect to his intense need for frequent physical intimacy with MC? Dr. Zayne's entire existence is centered around control. As the chief surgeon at Axo Hospital, his life revolves around precision, discipline, and the ability to remain emotionally detached. He is someone who operates in life or death situations daily, and his ability to stay in control of his emotions is what allows him to function at such a high level. But when it comes to his personal life, this control is suffocating. Now, from a psychological perspective, emotional suppression does not eliminate emotions, it amplifies them. Research has actually shown that when people suppress their emotions, their physiological arousal increases. In other words, the more Zayne tries to control himself, the more his emotions build up inside him, until they inevitably explode. And this is precisely what happens with MC. She's the first person to truly break through his walls, forcing him to confront emotions that he has buried for years. But Zayne doesn't know how to handle these emotions, and instead, they manifest in this overwhelming need for physical intimacy. Now, I want to quickly talk about Business Trip before I go into my next point. Business Trip is an interesting early intimate Zayne memory. MC questions why he didn't show any affection when they met up in public, and Zayne replies,
"What did you want me to do in front of all those people?"
This suggests that Zayne knew if he showed any physical affection, he would not be able to contain himself and want to take it further. At this point in their relationship, Zayne is still controlled, especially out in public. One of the things I noticed about Zayne throughout all of the memories in which they do have sex is that he always seems to want it after MC has verbalized some kind of affection for him. This seems to trigger something in Zayne's head that makes him want to show MC how much he loves her. And the only way he can do it is sex. Sex for Zayne is his love language. Now take Business Trip for example. In Business Trip, he turns off the TV and he climbs on top of MC. But this is only after MC finally admits that she missed him. Zayne has a trigger in his head for whenever MC says something that contradicts how he internally feels about himself. Now, think about Zayne and the trauma he has. He is terrified of hurting MC. He has an evil that is uncontrollable at times, and his deep-rooted fear comes from his nightmares, and we'll touch on that a little later. But when you bring all these things together, you realise the reason that Zayne constantly wants to jump MC is because she contradicts all of his inner feelings and makes him feel loved. And as we go through Zayne and MC's timeline of their relationship, we start to see it becomes more intense, and barriers are starting to be broken in how both Zayne and MC express themselves towards each other. Zayne, you can start to see, is becoming more sure of himself. He starts to allow himself to lose a little bit of control, but only because MC has both given him permission and reassured him that she loves him. Now, Zayne has this deep-rooted fear of losing MC and of hurting her. However, he knows himself. When it comes to the initiation of sex, he needs so much reassurance that he is allowed to lose control in those moments, because he knows he might hurt her. However, with her permission and with them testing the boundaries of that, Zayne can get more and more comfortable with the idea that sometimes he will hurt her, but she won't leave him. She'll still be here. Now, we actually see some key moments of this playing out. In absolute zeal, he asks her,
"Are you afraid of me?"
This isn't just a question about his dominance, it's a question about permission. As we've said, Zayne knows that once he lets go, he won't be able to hold back. He needs to know that she is not afraid of him before he allows himself to fully lose control in that moment. Similarly, in the Secret Times audio silent poem, he doesn't stop whatever intimate act they're doing even when MC confirms he's hurting her. Instead, Zayne adjusts and he tries to make her more comfortable. Now this is crucial because once again, Zayne can't stop. Remember, sex is this act where he is truly showing her his devotion and his love for her. The moment that it stops is almost like saying, "I don't love you." So for him, he needs to continue. He needs to make it to the end with her. And this moment is actually also about pushing limits while ensuring her pleasure. Now, Zayne does walk a razor-thin line between control and surrender. He is constantly testing how much he can give before he loses himself entirely. If Zayne struggles with control, Galen is the extreme version of that struggle. Galen's solution is to literally put the activator in his penis. Why does he do this? It's because he doesn't trust himself. He believes that if he fully surrenders to his desires, he'll become something dangerous. Rather than take that risk, he imposes strict physical restraints on himself. Now, this is actually a clear example of hypersuppression, which is an extreme form of self-denial that psychological research suggests can have serious consequences. Sexual repression, which is the conscious effort to suppress sexual thoughts and urges, often stems from cultural, religious, or personal fears about losing control. According to research, suppression can lead to a rebound effect, making those thoughts more persistent and intrusive. Galen's strict self-discipline only strengthens his internal struggle, reinforcing his fear that his desires are something monstrous. And let's take this back to Zayne. Zayne has those same fears, that if he loses control, he will become something monstrous and dangerous. But then there's MC. MC doesn't see Galen's desires as a curse. She doesn't believe he should fear himself. So, she forces him to take the frenzy enhancer, a substance that amplifies his instincts to an uncontrollable level. This moment is pivotal. MC isn't just proving that she can handle him, she is showing him that he doesn't have to punish himself for wanting her. Instead of suppression, she introduces acceptance, a psychological shift that research suggests leads to healthier emotional and sexual well-being. This is a perfect contrast between hypersuppression and acceptance. Freud's theories on repression suggest that unacknowledged desires often manifest in unintended, uncontrollable ways. More recent research confirms that suppressing emotions can lead to heightened stress responses and intensified desires. In Galen's case, His attempt to control himself only deepens his internal struggle, whereas MC's intervention forces him to confront his nature rather than fear it. Galen has spent his life running from himself. MC won't let him anymore. Zayne and Galen are two sides of the same coin. Zayne tries to maintain control, but MC makes it impossible. Galen enforces control, until MC shatters it completely. Their struggle reflects a broader psychological truth. Suppression doesn't erase desire, it intensifies it. Now, Foreseer's story mirrors this struggle on a cosmic scale. Foreseer is a demigod confined to the Tower of Thorns, and that's another embodiment of enforced control. He's bound by divine law, forbidden from stepping outside, seeing his own destiny, or loving another. He's punished with physical scars whenever he desires to leave. So, much like Galen, Foreseer is caught in a cycle of suppression, not just of his physical freedom, but of his emotional self. MC's arrival disrupts this balance. And just as MC forces Galen to abandon suppression and embrace his instincts, she becomes a catalyst for the Foreseer's defiance against the fate imposed on him. Foreseer's acceptance of love is what ultimately brings him peace. By allowing himself to love MC, he breaks free from the suffering of suppression and fully embraces his desires. His willingness to sacrifice himself is not an act of despair, but of fulfillment. He has shown the woman he loves how much she means to him. In doing so, he achieves a serenity that has eluded him. Both Foreseer and Galen serve as case studies in the consequences of hypercontrol. Whether through psychological repression or divine decree, both characters are punished for their desires. MC in both narratives represents the force of acceptance. By proving that embracing one's true nature is the only path to true freedom, even if it comes at a cost. The theme of suppression and control extends to Dawnbreaker too. Dawnbreaker is the darkest version of Zayne. He exists in a world of monsters, death, and survival. He's cold, he's brutal, and he's a killer. He's everything that Zayne fears becoming. Now, what makes Dawnbreaker's story so tragic is that he dreams of Dr. Zayne's life. He sees Zayne with MC, loving her, holding her, and making love to her. These dreams are his only solace, and he falls in love with MC knowing he can never have her. However, Dr. Zayne experiences the reverse. He sees Dawnbreaker's nightmares. He watches himself kill MC, reinforcing his deepest fear that he is destined to hurt the one he loves. Dawnbreaker is more than a shadow of Zayne. He's a warning. If Zayne loses control, if he gives in to his darkest urges, he will become the very thing he dreads, a monster capable of destroying the one person he cherishes the most. This is what makes Zayne's intimacy with MC so profound. Every touch, every moment of love is an act of defiance against a fate where his love turns to destruction. He fights for control, not just for himself, but for MC, proving that love does not have to end in ruin. Where Dawnbreaker succumbs to a world of violence, Dr. Zayne fights to carve out a future where his love does not end in bloodshed. His struggle is not just about control. It's actually about choosing love over fear and acceptance over suppression. Without MC's existence in Dawnbreaker's world, he is left without the guiding thought that teaches Zayne to accept himself. She is not there to reassure him that it's okay to let go, to love, or to be vulnerable. He has no one to challenge the idea that his desires make him a monster. Without her, he drowns in his own darkness, succumbing entirely to his inner turmoil. His love for MC exists only in distant dreams, but without her presence, he has no way of believing in a world where he could be anything but a killer. Zayne is a character defined by control. Whether as Dr. Zayne, Foreseer, Galen, or Dawnbreaker, He is constantly engaged in an internal battle, one that revolves around his fear of losing control and the consequences of surrendering to his emotions. However, one of the most intriguing aspects of his character is his tendency towards public sex with MC. Now, at first glance, this may seem like a simple expression of passion or even possessiveness, but psychologically, it represents something much deeper. Now, engaging in public intimacy creates a paradox for Zayne. On one hand, it's an expression of risk. On the other, it allows him to test his limits in a controlled environment. Psychologists describe this as edgework, where individuals seek controlled risk to experience heightened emotions without complete recklessness. For Zayne, public sex is a way of seeing how much he can let go, while still maintaining some semblance of restraint. The knowledge that someone could see them, but likely won't, heightens the experience, making it a calculated risk rather than an act of impulsivity. Zayne has spent his life bound by rules. Society's rules, the expectations placed on him, and the self-discipline he enforces upon himself. However, when it comes to MC, those rules begin to blur. Public sex becomes an act of rebellion, not just against social norms, but against the idea that he must always be in control. Studies in psychology suggest that breaking social conventions can be a form of autonomy-seeking behaviour. People who feel constrained by societal pressures often seek ways to reclaim personal agency. For Zayne, being intimate with MC in unconventional places is his way of defying the rules that have dictated his entire existence. In essence, it's not about proving something to others, it's about proving to himself that he has the ability to make choices driven by passion rather than restraint. In the end, Zayne's need for public intimacy is not about dominance, possession, or exhibitionism. It's about love, fear, and survival. His deepest fear is losing MC, and through these moments, he seeks to remind himself that she is still there, still within his reach. And for a man who has spent his entire life fearing the moment he loses control, these moments with MC are the only times he is truly free. Zayne's high sex drive, rooted in his fear of losing control, serves as more than just a physical need. It's his way of expressing everything he struggles to say with words. In each intimate encounter, Zayne is communicating his deepest emotions. I love you more than I can contain. I trust you enough to let go, but I'm terrified of losing myself in the process. I need you, and this is the only way I know how to show it without fear. Through these moments, he's saying, I want you to know that even in my darkest fears and deepest struggles, you are the one I choose over and over again. In essence, every intimate moment with MC is Zayne's most vulnerable act of devotion, a way of proving through his actions that despite his internal battles, his love for her is unwavering.